Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Profit First for Contractors here on Builder Funnel Radio. This is episode 4 of season 1. Shawn, welcome back.
Hey Spencer, thanks for having me back again, and thanks for everybody that's tuned into this whole series so far. If this is your first one, then go back and listen to the other three. They're incredible. I mean,
they're stellar. Yeah.
Right.
Really,
yeah. If you haven't listened to them yet, we can say that, right? Like
yeah.
I like that. They're stellar.
That was the first word that popped into my mind. So it must be true. Yeah.
It has to be true. I heard it on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But today we're gonna shift gears just a little bit from profit and the accounts, and kind of we got really deep in the weeds on that and into some good stuff. But we're gonna talk about something that I think all of us either struggle with or have struggled with, and that is time management. And especially today, I feel like with all the distractions and notifications, you've got email and social media and texts and all these things. So it's so easy to get derailed. But yeah, Shawn, where do we start with this topic? Are there some common traps that you see that just, we all fall into with distractions and things that suck away our precious time?
Yeah. And really being able to effectively manage your time. And I don't even like that term, but if I created some other term, people wouldn't know what I'm talking about. It's really about time prioritization, like establishing priorities. And when I work with my clients, it's actually the first system that we put in place. A little self-serving to me as a business coach, because you have to create time in your business schedule to show up and get coaching and do put the systems in place that we're working on. But it really, when you're done with a coaching program, then you fill in that time with the other things that you need to work on in your business. And so that the common traps that I find, and I suffered from this too, until I use this same time management system that we're going to be talking about here in my own business and in my own construction businesses before I started this, is we all have the tendency to react to the urgent because it's urgent. It's in our face. This thing needs to be done. This fire needs to be put out. I talk about it when I teach it in some seminars as the crying babies. So I got 5 kids. And early on, and you're a new parent or newish parent, right?
Yep.
And
you just turned 1, so I'm getting
okay.
familiar.
So you're still
a rookie, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you're still in that phase. Then either you or your wife or both of you have probably developed that ability that when your baby, your poor little baby, starts crying, I'm saying like that first breath, like someone's already darting down the hallway or whatever, right? We're reacting to the crying babies. And because we have to, it's life can be miserable if we don't learn how to calm the baby down. But by the time you get to 5 kids, the crying babies, you're just like, oh, turn the monitor off. We know they'll be fine, right? So we're all like kind of those new parents when we're starting with time management, and we react to the urgent things. And then we realize that if we can get outside of ourselves and realize not everything is urgent, because your listeners out there, there's some urgent things that are on their to-do list, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And you're not going to get to them. So guess what? They're not urgent. In fact, if they don't ever get done, they probably should be they shouldn't be on the list at all. But right now they're occupying space in your brain and some level of stress in your body, carrying these urgent things around, just trying to react to them. So we all fall into thinking that because it's on a to-do list, then we have to somehow give it some kind of attention, when a lot of that stuff doesn't need to be on there.
Yeah, over the years, that really resonates with me, because you build your list and you're working off project lists and you're pulling over your active to-dos or whatever system you use. And then you realize after a week or two, there's these 3 or 5 items that just kind of keep hanging around and they never keep getting done. You're going, well, do I need to get these done? Or why are they just hanging here? But to your point, if it's urgent, it will get done, because there's usually a deadline or a consequence or something that will happen if you don't get it done.
Right. And you had said it too, hey, we all ask ourselves that if we're working. I don't do to-do lists. To-do lists don't work. They're scientifically proven not to work. we don't have enough time to get into an exercise that I could prove it to everybody, but so I'll just kind of leave that
Now
hanging
I'm
there. But
curious. Yeah,
yeah, now
exactly.
you're curious.
Nice.
So you say, well, why are these things still on my list? And it's because you have to understand how the brain works. The brain is wired to conserve as much energy as possible. It does not want to burn calories in order to think about things. And so when you have a to-do list full of a bunch of random stuff on there, then our brains want to go to the easiest thing to understand first. And the easiest thing to understand are usually the small, simple tasks on our to-do list. So we focus on those and we have a tendency to do those. And here's the other reason, because our brains and our bodies are dopamine addicts. And so when there's a little shot of dopamine every time we check off a box on the to-do list. And now I'm going to hit some of your listeners square in the eyes, maybe you too, right? We've all
probably, yeah.
Yeah, if you're working off of a to-do list, we have all done it where we have written things on the to-do list that we have already done just so that we can check them off. Now, do you do that, Spencer?
I have done that. I don't do it anymore. Yeah,
right.
Thank goodness. But I know many people like that because they're list completers, or that's like how they, I guess, self-associate, you know.
That's right. And we want to feel good. We want to feel that little hit of dopamine. You might not even realize you're doing it. And you put things on your list that you've already done or you're already planning to do. Meaning like, let me put on my list here, make to-do list, take a shower, breathe, eat some breakfast. Like you're going to do those things anyway, but it makes us feel good to look down the list and say, oh, we've gotten all these things done. The other problem with to-do lists is they're usually random. And so they don't have, or they're not organized, and there's no context of time. So that's what we're talking about here. So instead of, if you're a big fan of to-do lists, then when I say, instead of writing them on a list, try to write them on a calendar. Assign them a day and a duration. So I'm going to do this thing at this time, and it's going to take me this long. And what you'll find is you'll say, well, I'm not going to put this thing on my calendar and occupy space because it's only going to take me 5 minutes to do it. Exactly. So if it's only a 5-minute sort of thing, it doesn't need to be occupying space on a to-do list because you're not going to get to the important things that really matter. And that's why you should take and group, and we get into the details of this, you should group all of those small little tasks and just assign them one block of time on your calendar and say, on Mondays from 9 to 11, I deal with all of the little insignificant stuff that I got to clean up so that the rest of my week or whatever is focused on these big important things. So I'm not saying don't make a to-do list, although, well, sure. I really am saying don't make a to-do list. Put all of the insignificant stuff in a certain block of time and do it in a focused time.
Yeah. That's, I like that, you know, and it's interesting. I don't think I'm all the way there yet on what you're describing, but since having Carter, I've used the calendar more because I intentionally wanted to block off a time I left work to go spend time with him before he goes to sleep at 6 p.m. I don't know why he goes to sleep that early, but that doesn't leave a lot of time if I normally, you know, if I just left at my normal time. And so by doing that, you find you start compressing and you get those other things done in a shorter amount of time, but I think I have room for improvement. But I guess where you're going with this is no lists, basically just everything's on the calendar, and then you're just showing up and executing, even if it's a bunch of little stuff, like it's in an hour block or a 2-hour block or whatever that is.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that you don't make to-do lists. I certainly make lists of things that say, hey, these are some things that, you know, I need to make sure I don't forget. Right.
Sure.
But so I get them out of my head, but I'm not using it. I'm not working off of that. I'll take that list of stuff and then I prioritize it and put it onto a calendar, because I've always said this: what's important gets scheduled and what's scheduled gets done. And the way that I will present this, especially a lot of times when I'm traveling to conferences and there's a room full of construction business owners and managers, and we're all busy. We all, and this is always my most popular session. It was one of the top 10 attended at IBS, and I'll be doing it again this year at JLC and some other functions. And the room's always packed. Because don't worry, everybody suffers from this. But when you show up for an effective time management course at a conference like that, I always ask people like, hey, what did you have to do in order to be here?
Yeah.
Because if you weren't here, you'd be doing something else. And so we talk about it or whatever. And I say, okay, you've already proven to yourself that you can effectively manage your time better, because if you weren't here, you'd be doing a bunch of urgent stuff or whatever, but this was important. So you showed up here, which meant you probably had to communicate with your team. You're going to be gone for a day or so. You had to buy a plane ticket. You had to reserve a hotel room. You had to do all of these other things because this thing ended up on the calendar. This thing is important. So the important thing, when it gets on the calendar and gets scheduled, then it gets done. So you got to take a look and back out and say, first, I'm going to put the important things on my schedule. Then I'll fill in around that with all of the other stuff that I have to do. And when I say important things, I'm not putting a list of tasks. I'm saying, what are the important things that I need this applies personally as well, as a business owner, as a father, as a husband, as a friend or whatever, and say, okay, for my business, let's say there, like we'd said before in other episodes, business starts with sales. If I'm the salesperson, when am I doing sales? Like, what are some blocks of time? Because I know I'm not doing sales all day long every day. I'm not a salesperson. It just happens to be one of the roles that I play.
Yeah, it's one of the hats. Yeah.
It's one of the hats. So I'm going to put that hat and I'm going to put it on my calendar when it's most convenient for me. That really hits a lot of contractors. They're like, well, wait a minute. Aren't we supposed to make it convenient for your customers? No. You make it convenient for you, because when you make it convenient for your customers, here's what happens. You end up working weekends and evenings, meeting with them and doing all of that kind of stuff. And it's actually not very professional. And the reason I say that is, like, your best ideal client, high end, everybody wants high end clients or whatever. Great. When they need to get an oil change, what do? They go make an appointment, or they take time off during their lunch, or they take time off of work to go get their oil changed. Absolutely. When their kid has a cavity,
pediatrician,
right? They don't call them up and say, hey, can I swing by after, because it's more convenient for me, right? And for contractors, we're just so reactionary. And no, that's not to say that you have to be in people's homes, especially if you're a remodeling contractor, or you have to meet them on the job site for, new home builders or whatever. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but you're a professional. Just have them make an appointment with you and say, here's when we do fill in the blank, sales call, on-site meetings or whatever, and let them just react to your schedule. This is what I say is, I think 99% of most people do not have control of their own schedule. So if you're part of the 1% that does, people will just default to yours.
Yeah,
at least that's where I'm going to, at least that's where I'm going to start out at. Hey, you want to meet? Well, I do these site meetings on Tuesday mornings from 9 to 11 or Thursday afternoons from 3 to 5. How those work for you? And let them say, no, that doesn't work for me. And then come up with another time. But you'll find that people will say, oh yeah, I can make that work, because they make appointments with other professionals and they make it work.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And that is something that I implemented last year, was just having people can book time on my calendar, but it used to just be wide open. It was just like chaos. And, but then it was like, okay, I'm blocking off like 1 or 2 days or sections of days. And then suddenly people were just booking 2 or 3 weeks out because that week didn't work, and you realize that, other people can wait too. They called me today, but it's not like, if there's no other options, they go, okay, yeah, I'll meet next week.
Because it makes it easier for them. It's really the path of least resistance. And I always say, I'm the same way. It is to block out my calendar and to make appointments available. And I always tell somebody, hey, if these times don't work for you, let us know.
Yeah,
we'll work around it. And literally 10% of the time, we'll jump through some hoops to some, for some, and I travel a lot too. So that's just part of what I have to do. But the same thing for contractors. Just come up with a sales time and just tell them, hey, we do this time and this time. And again, what's convenient for you and convenient for your business. And then your customers will fall in line. And sometimes, we got to go out Wednesday evening, but I'm only running out Wednesday evening when it's the right client in the right neighborhood with the right architect with the right budget. Right. But then when I know that I'm working late on Wednesday evening because I'm out on a sales call and I own the business, I'm telling my team, by the way, I'm going to be out working this evening, getting business for everybody, making sure we all stay employed. So I'm coming into the office later because we can always just work a 16-hour day. So on those days, I've got blocked out, hey, I might have a late sales meeting. I'm coming into the office late because I'm going to take my kids to school. I'm going to have dinner or breakfast with my spouse, or I'm just not going to work. And that's another very important part of effectively managing your time. In fact, it's really the key to making it work is blocking out open time.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. So before we get to open time, I'm curious just because I know this happened to me, and I'm assuming maybe some other people too. But so say you start blocking off, you got your important stuff on the calendar, and then you have a couple of these blocks of like bundled sections of random stuff. And so I've got on my calendar and I'm going through my day, and then something comes up, email, Slack message, text, whatever, distraction, phone call. And so it breaks me away from the scheduled thing. And then boom, now you're kind of like out of system, and those things need to get put somewhere else. So then you end up either reshuffling or it just like crushes the whole system. So what is that, just a lack of discipline and staying to the schedule, or is there something else going on there?
Yeah. I mean, what you really need to do is you've got to identify the distractions. And I know it sounds crazy, but email, distraction, phone calls,
Terrible.
distraction, some unplanned meetings, distractions. And so the way that I describe it is you have to imagine that every person that interacts with you, whether they're physically coming into your office or your workspace, and this isn't just for people in the office, this is how you need to train your employees too. Someone's coming into your workplace and everybody is bringing a circus monkey with them, and it's sitting there on the shoulder, and they want to take that circus monkey off of their shoulder and they want to put it into your workspace. And what that looks like in the real world is a question, an email, a phone call, or whatever. And they're not intending to train wreck your day or your level of focus, but they want to leave that circus monkey in your workspace and then walk away and let you deal with it. And I had a lead carpenter that taught me this lesson as he described the circus monkey. That's where I kind of learned it from. He just got good at saying, like, it's seeing people coming into his workspace, seeing that monkey on their shoulder, and he would just think, it's not my monkey, it's not my circus. Like, I'm not dealing with it. And so you just have to categorize this as a distraction, or it's really comes from the 4 quadrants from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And again, without getting in all the details, there are things that you need to make decisions on, where you need to do your thinking. There's the things that you need to do, and that's where most of us get trapped. But there are things that we need to do. There are things that we need to delegate to others, and then things that we need to delete. So we want to look at distractions and delete as many of them as possible, especially for the business owner. So email, hey, we're going to have to respond to email. I'm just going to do it in a certain amount of time, in a certain block of time, where I say, I won't be distracted from other important things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just a quick note on that too, for a period of time, I was working through the Pomodoro technique, and that one you work in basically intervals of 25 minutes and there's some scheduled breaks. But one of the things I think, whether you do that or not, that's super helpful was basically letting people know that that's a system you're following, and that when you're in the middle of one of those time chunks, you can't be interrupted. You literally are working on that, and they can access you later, or they know when they can access you. And I find that with, your team, that's helped me a lot. It's like, hey, if, my headphones are in, that's like the signal that I'm in that zone, or if the door is closed, and I try to have the door open a lot, but there's some signals, and if those signals are up, then you train the rest of your team to not bring you, the monkeys or the distractions and those sort of things. So
yeah, you have to yeah, exactly. You have to train your team, but they also need to know why.
Yes.
And if you explain to your team why, then they start copying you. And then you can ask them, hey, especially when you're starting this out, if this is resonating with some folks, are like, I really need to get better at that. Then, when you get starting this out, make sure you tell people why it's important, so they can they'll see you change. And then you get to approach them and say, hey, let's talk about how you're handling your schedule, because they've seen it be effective for you. And then you can help them starting to block out their time. And then you realize when everybody in your company is looking at and prioritizing their time in a certain way, then that becomes a cultural thing. Like, hey, this is just what we do here. One of the first things you're going to learn if you work here is, like, you got to identify what I would call your Q2 activities. That comes from Covey's book, your Q2 activities. And man, you got to get that blocked on the schedule, because every team member has their 3 or 4 Q2 activities. It's on the calendar. Then they've got their Q1 activities, the things that they need to do. And you better put some open time in there, because, and I use this quote from Mike Tyson all the time. This speaks to your point about open time from before. He's got that famous quote that's been said everywhere. Everybody has a plan if they get punched in the mouth. And that's the problem with making it a schedule or a calendar. As soon as you make it, it changes.
Yeah.
That's a reality.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So in order to be successful at managing your time, you just have to be real and saying, this plan that I have for today or this week something's going to happen to blow it up. So I'm going to plan for when this thing gets blown up. I can shift these blocks of time around, but next week, I'm not rethinking the whole week. I'm dropping back into my default week.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about open time a little bit more. How much of it do you try to plan into the week for, those types of things? And then if the schedule goes as planned, how do you best utilize open time?
Well, the first thing where it really starts is prioritizing the chunks or the roles or the different kind of mindsets that I have to switch from. So, for example, when I was running a trim and millwork company as a COO, I had my time blocked out on Monday mornings for proposals and estimates. And again, for me, the Monday mornings were a little bit quieter. And I didn't have subcontractors calling and all, but that's also because we set our guys up on Friday afternoon. So it all kind of leads with one another. But for example, I'm doing estimates and proposals on Monday morning from like 8 o'clock to maybe noon then. And then I would take a break from that and I would check my email. So I'm not checking any email at all Monday morning. And I'm saving an hour at lunchtime to do that. And then I would get back into either estimates and proposals. And then Tuesday morning, knowing that sometimes it would, if I ran over some time, then I'd put a block of time on Tuesday morning, just in case. If what I had planned on Monday, because I'm taking a deep dive into all of that kind of stuff, I'd leave that for open time so that I didn't wreck the rest of the week. But then I also knew, like, hey, by I don't know, whatever it was, 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, that's when I started doing site visits or other meetings. So I kind of had a hard stop there. And then I would take a look at other chunks of time. Like if I was out in the field doing site visits, then that left itself for a bunch of open time, depending on drive times and all that. So I would just leave a big block and I would say, okay, if I don't have a lot of site visits to do, then I always look to the next period of time to say, hey, what was that? Or what am I going to work on? Can I get ahead on that? Plug that in, and then I've got an open time there. But usually for me in the office, it was around crunching numbers. So whether it was estimates and proposals or towards the end of the week, it was doing financial review. If I didn't get all of the invoicing done and reviewed, because we had a hard stop like Friday mornings, that's when invoices went out. So if I didn't get through all of that stuff on Thursday, I needed to make sure to have an open block of time on Friday. And sometimes the other things that happened during the week would push my invoicing time to Friday morning. And I'm like, oh, great, we can still meet our deadline. And so I'm kind of looking at my hard stops and my deadlines, backing out from that, giving myself a little bit of buffer to get punched in the face, and then prioritizing the other blocks of time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And it's structured enough that you're hitting all your important things, but it's still got the flexibility to deal with the reality of just stuff changing and stuff happening.
Yeah, and it does change. It will change every week. And so you just have to plan for it. And that's where, when I teach this, that is the biggest hindrance for most people, is they get it. It's kind of like profit first. Like we were talking about rule number 3, you got to start small. Like people get profit first and they're like, oh, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go put 10% because Shawn said so in a profit account. You've never made 10%. Your system's not going to work. Same thing with block scheduling and design. What I call designing your ideal week is you just start off with one block of time. And practice that for 6 to 8 weeks. And then you add another block of time. And then when you start viewing your calendar in these blocks of time of the most important things that you need to do, then you'll just see the open time appears. And then your doing time, the urgent things that you still, we still got to deal with crying babies and putting out fires. Then you fill that time in around your most important stuff. And when you get focused, like you had said, you'll find that you'll get more done in less time. And some of the stuff, when you fill up the calendar, you're just like, I don't have time for that anymore. Guess what?
Yeah, forget it.
You don't do it. Or you say, that's what I need to be delegating. My Q3, something that is not important, is urgent but not important, something that maybe that you need to delegate, it may become an employee or a team member's most important thing that they need to work on. So that's another way to kind of identify by blocking these things out and saying, well, I don't have any time left. Yeah. So all of that other stuff you got to do, guess what? Somebody else has got to do it, and you can make it their most important task. And they're going to have more time to focus on it because the time you're trying to do it is inefficient anyway.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, it just made me think back. I just had put somebody in our operations role basically last year, and we had outlined duties, responsibilities, and goals, and within about 6 or 8 months, like they're doing that role like 2x or 3x the level I was, because time, and just time and energy, and you're wearing multiple hats. And so to your point, like you discover very quickly what those things are that need to be delegated, and then it's their most important, so it happens usually faster, better, all those things than what you're giving it, because you're giving it just enough to get by.
It's Parkinson's law, just enough time, it's squeezed, it's crunched, we're not focused on it, and we're just getting it done. And when you can delegate that to somebody that can focus their time on it more, then it becomes more efficient. And for those of you that are on Spencer's team that are listening to this, and he walks out of here and just goes and assigns you a bunch of tasks that he doesn't want to do anymore, I'm going to go ahead and apologize for that up front.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to say come to you, not to me.
Yeah. No. They can call me, but phone calls are distractions. They're going to go straight to voicemail.
Yeah, just send them a DM on Instagram. So.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's good. And so I'm curious. Well, first, just a recap. Start small. Like you said, block off one chunk and then implement that. I think you said 6 to 8 weeks. But make it a habit and then layer in those chunks. And that goes back to the other episodes with the other things we've been talking about. Just like start somewhere, build the habit, and then build on it. And you'll be there before you know it, but just work the process. But the question I want to get to next was, okay, so you're blocking all these things for your work schedule. Is your family, personal, and work schedule just all integrated then, and you're using that same system there?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's everybody talks about work-life balance, and I heard this from, I think it was Tony Robbins that said work-life balance is a load of crap. It's work-life integration, and especially if you own the business, then you should have the freedom to integrate that a little bit. So like we had talked about before, like if you're going out on a sales call and you're going to go out on Wednesday evening, I'm only going to do that on Wednesday evenings because we don't have karate and jujitsu with the kiddos. Like I'm just not going to miss that. So I'm not available for late calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's one of those things where, you got to integrate the personal stuff, because if you don't, then it's all going to blow up anyway. Like we can all just work more and fill up our time with work, but especially if you own the business, you got to create a little bit of, what I'm saying, downtime, not even just open time, but downtime away from the business, and have that strategically planned. And you've got the freedom to do it if you own the business. So, hey, I don't know, every fourth Monday you work from home, and the people know why. It's not just like, oh, Spencer's goofing off or whatever. that's his planned downtime that he uses to think and vision, for the business. And maybe that comes from spending time with your family or whatever that is. And then they see you the next Monday and they come in and you're like ready to execute on new things. They're going to understand, like, we're not going to interrupt that personal time or that open time or whatever that is, because we see the results of that on the back end. So yeah, I just integrate all of it. And especially we have to, with 5 kids, we'll leave somebody, like, we'll get in trouble with the law around here if, if we abandon a kid somewhere, just simply because we forgot. So sometimes my wife and I mean, we are like, I'm pulling in the driveway and she's pulling out. I don't, she's got some kids and
hopefully you got the rest of them,
Yeah, I hope so. I even had that conversation with her last night. We were coordinating and I said, okay, so I just need to show up home with 4 kids, right? And she was like, yeah, preferably our 4 boys. I was like, okay, but any 4?
Yeah,
let's be clear, right? So
yeah, that's awesome.
And when you give yourself to permission as the business owner to integrate work and life, it just becomes simpler. But the thing is, you need to tell your people why. Even if you're a small company, tell your customers. They'll appreciate it. Hey, can't meet you here. If you set them up with the right expectations, Fridays, this is, for example, Fridays, we're not going to be here on the job site. That doesn't mean that your project isn't being worked on. We're working on your project in the office. We're working on invoicing. We're working on, whatever else. And this is how we, take care of the business. Now, there may be some people out there on the site, but you're not going to see me. There's nothing magical about working Monday through Friday. So if you tell your customers, hey, on Friday, this is when, especially for small business owners that are out there listening, as long as you are taking care of them and you set proper expectations, I find that, people are okay with it, and your customers will actually appreciate it because they know they've dealt with other small business owners that just work all the time. They never answer their phone calls. Their invoices are always messed up. They're always tired, and they're always last minute sort of thing. So be one of those business owners that, like, we're small. We're okay with our smallness. But one way that we serve our clients is that I'm not going to be here on Friday. And they'll be like, okay. And as long as the quality and the service is there, they won't care.
Yeah. As long as that, they're all about the end result. And I love this concept because I had heard a few years ago, somebody was talking about, I think a lot of business owners, you feel guilty almost if you're not putting in a certain number of hours, and it's all in our own head. So it could be, 50, 60, 70, whatever, we grew up with. Maybe your, parents worked a lot or somebody in your family did. But what I found is that, other things that you do in your life, like going to the gym or working out or reading self-development books or listening to those things, like those things, like an hour spent on one of those activities might be worth 4 just grinding it out, checking more emails and doing random junk at the office. And so that switch helped me a lot. Just get over it. There's a difference between hours in and effectiveness. And that's kind of what you're talking about in terms of recharge. Like pick a day where you're just going to recharge, and then you come in Monday and you're on fire, and you get twice as much done. So I love the integration piece versus the balance piece.
Yeah. And I have talked to so many construction business owners, and I've heard this all the time, is like they send their families on vacation, but they stay and work. And I'm like, listen, the last time that you did that, and it's usually not, it's not an isolated incident. I'm like, the last time you did that, did it grow your business? Are you any further along? And I apply that to like, we got to work on Saturdays. Okay, you always work on Saturdays. Is working Saturdays, is it helping you level your business up? If it is, I mean, there's those times we bring in the whole team, we accomplish something and we achieve a goal because we need to do that for this project or for our business. But like, if it becomes a standard sort of way, then it's just not very effective. And I've had to teach myself this because I love to work. I love what I do and I work all the time. But what I have learned is that now downtime, man, I am down. Like, you're not going to hear from me. I'm not going to check emails. And like the last time that we went on a family trip, I was like, I'm not even posting stuff on Instagram, not even like little personal stuff. Like I was down, I was detached, and it was so wonderful and so recharging to come back into that. So I just say, if you're struggling with it and be like, oh, Shawn, I can't take off this time, or I got to send my family out on vacation. Just ask yourself, the last time you worked like that, did it level up your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And guys, yeah, as we wrap this show, just remember, starting small, like Shawn said, pick one block at a time and just build on that. And it all starts with the important items that you need to get done. And then you'll just start chipping away and you'll make progress. But Shawn, any last thoughts or words on effective time management, or if you had it your way, time prioritization, which just doesn't quite have that ring?
No, it does. That's why I don't like to say it.
Yeah.
So if you're in the to-do list mode or whatever, make a list of all of the important things that you need to get done, and then cut the list by, cut 75% of it out, because not everything can be important. There's only a few things that are important. And boil it down to that one thing. This is what I do every morning. I say, okay, what's the one thing that I need to get done today? Now, doesn't mean that I don't get other things done. What's the one thing? So just start there. You want to make your list and feed that dopamine. Go ahead and make your list, but then figure out one thing and start there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Again, this is episode 4 of Profit First for Contractors, season 1 on Builder Funnel Radio. Shawn, thanks for joining me. And
thanks, Spencer. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see you guys for episode 5. That'll be our final episode. See you next time on Builder Funnel Radio.